Egoísta. Isagi Yoichi. 俺はストライカーだ。
Asagi is in the game that will change his life. The ball is passed to him, and everyone is cheering him on. If he scores this goal, his team can go to the nationals. Everything he's ever dreamed of could become a reality. But just as he's about to kick the ball, one of his teammates asks him for a pass. Asagi isn't sure whether to do it because he knows that if he keeps the ball, he's almost certain to score. However, he remembers his coach's words, all for one, one for all. Asagi passes the ball, but here's what happens. This great mistake isn't wasted by the opposing team, and it's especially capitalized on by one of the tournament's best players, Kira. His teammate passed him the ball, securing the victory. On the other hand, there are the losers, and Asagi is among them. He can only watch as everyone else celebrates their victory, and he simply accepts his defeat.
I lost.
But on the way home, all his frustration pours out from the depths of his heart, and he can only wonder one thing: is teamwork worth it? What would have happened if he hadn't made the pass? What would have happened if they had won? But there's no point in dwelling on it. His dreams have been left behind. Although that might not be entirely true, because when he gets home, his mom greets him with his favorite meal and tells him that a letter from the Japanese Football Federation has arrived. When Asagi reads the letter, he realizes that he's been invited to some kind of certification. The next day, he goes to the location mentioned in the letter, and there, he meets Kira. They greet each other, and Kira tells him that he played really well in the previous game, which makes Asagi happy because someone with as much talent as Kira recognized his potential. Afterward, they enter a room, and that's where they realize that they aren't the only ones who have been called. A large number of players, including some quite well-known ones, have also been invited. What's curious to Asagi is that everyone, without exception, is a forward. He will soon find out why. A person responsible for the program, Ego, starts talking to them from a corridor. Ego is the guy Japan hired to win the World Cup. Ego begins to explain the plan to make that happen. All Japan needs to win is to have the best forward, and to achieve that, they created the Blue Lock program. From that day on, everyone will live in this place, do all the special exercises, and they won't be able to go home or think about anything else. But in return for all this sacrifice, one of them will become the best forward in the world. Upon hearing all of this, Kira isn't on board because Ego is asking them to abandon their teams, which is not okay in football. Besides, many of them have to play in the national tournament. Ego's response is that anyone who wants to leave can do so. Football doesn't progress with mediocrity like them. None of them knows what football is about. Teamwork, sacrifice, cooperation. None of these are the answers. Football is about scoring more goals than the opponent. To further emphasize this idea, Ego provides more examples, like the words of the world's best player, Noel Noah. Noel says he'd rather score 3 goals in a game and lose than win by only scoring 1. Ego continues to give more and more examples with the best players in history. In summary, you can't be the best without being selfish. The stars are selfish. Upon hearing all of this, Asaga's mind starts to debate whether what Ego is saying is true or not. No one has ever told him something like this. Is this what it means to be a forward? After thinking it over, Asagi arrives at his answer: yes, being selfish is the way. The protagonist takes a step forward, and this encourages everyone else to do the same. Officially, the Blue Lock program has begun. Upon arriving at the training center, Asagi meets his fellow teammates: Kira, the muscular Risunk, the sleepy Bakira, Connie from Attack on Titan, and the others. After getting acquainted, Ego explains how things work. To start, everyone has been grouped based on similar abilities. Additionally, their uniform displays their level from 1 to 300. Unfortunately for our friend, he's level 299. The top 5 players at the end of the experiment will secure a spot on the under-20 national team. But the remaining 295 will never be able to join a team. On that day, they have their first test, which is essentially a dodgeball game. The last person holding the ball when time runs out is disqualified. The game begins, and the first to touch the ball is Gurumi. He looks for someone to pass it to, but everyone runs to avoid being hit. Meanwhile, Kira keeps mentioning that he thinks this is insane, and nothing Ego says is true. Gurumi continues to search for a victim until he spots Bakira seemingly asleep. However, that's not the case because Bakira is wide awake and kicks Gurumi. Rensuke, who didn't like what happened, tells him to play fair. Gurumi takes advantage of this and passes the ball to him. Rensuke's pacifist attitude disappears, and he throws the ball with all his might, but Gurumi grabs Asagi, making the ball hit him. Now, our friend has the ball, and time is running out. Bakira holds onto Rensuke and tells him to aim for him. However, at that moment, he trips over Gurumi's ankle and falls to the ground. Asagi has the perfect opportunity to save himself, but once again, he questions whether what he's doing is right, coming to the conclusion that if he wins, it will be by defeating someone better than him. Bakira likes this way of thinking and willingly takes the ball, pursuing Kira with a fierce UFC fighter complex. Kira manages to escape, but just as Bakira prepares to make a pass, he does so, and it reaches Asagi, who is determined to fulfill his dreams. Kira asks Asagi what he just did, to which Asagi replies, saying he shot the ball without thinking. At that moment, Ego interrupts their conversation and announces that Kira has been eliminated from the team. Upon hearing this, Kira becomes very angry and tells Ego that the TR game has nothing to do with football. But Ego reveals that the room they are in is the size of the penalty area, which surprises Kira. Ego then tells him that the TR game is indeed related to football because it requires the necessary skills of the sport to win. Ego concludes by telling Asagi that he could have saved himself by shooting at Ego when he had a second. However, he missed his chance by thinking it was all over, so he tells Asagi that a forward has the responsibility to fight to the end. Ego then asks Kira to leave, which angers him, but Kira decides to withdraw nonetheless. Upon seeing this, Asagi begins to feel excited for some reason and decides to ask Bakira why he passed him the ball. Bakira replies, telling him that he knew Asagi would shoot, as Bakira chose to believe in him. This causes Asagi to think that Bakira is a strange guy. Ego interrupts their conversation and tells the boys that they must engrave the sensation of victory in their minds because it will be necessary for them to become stronger. Afterward, he mentions that the boys have passed the admission test. From now on, the 11 players in the room will form Team Ziso. After this, we see the boys start training within Blue Lock. During the training, Asagi realizes that his teammates are very good, so he feels compelled to train and become stronger than them. After training, the boys go to the dining hall, where Asagi notices that the food quality varies according to their ranking. So, Asagi and Iga are forced to eat the lower quality food. Afterward, we see the boys going to their dormitory to sleep. However, Asagi begins to think that he needs to become stronger. He decides to get out of his bed to go train. But once at the exit, he encounters Bakira, who asks if he can train with him, to which Asagi clearly agrees. So, both of them go to the training field, but before they start, Asagi asks how Bakira knew he would go for Kira. Bakira responds, telling him that he has a monster inside him, which has always told him what he should be during football matches. So, his inner monster told him to pass the ball to Asagi at that moment. Bakira realized that Asagi has a monster inside him too. Hearing this, Asagi begins to feel very confused but decides to learn more about the monster within him since he wants to survive in Blue Lock. So, Asagi decides to start his training with Bakira. This excites Bakira as he sees Asagi's determination. But they are interrupted by a Blue Lock announcement, asking them to return to their rooms immediately as they will update the player rankings. So Bakira and Asagi join the Z team, and they realize that their rankings have changed completely. In this moment, Ego appears before them and tells them that in Blue Lock, there are 25 teams ranging from A to Z. He then mentions that the 25 teams are divided into 5 Blue Lock blocks. Upon hearing this information, the boys realize they are the worst team of all. Ego tells the boys that the first selection will begin soon, in which 5 block teams will face each other in a round-robin format. He then mentions that the top 2 teams will move on to the second survival phase. Hearing this, the boys tell Ego that all of them are forwards, so they won't be able to play like a normal team. Ego responds by asking them to abandon common sense because that way, they will have new ideas in their brains for playing football. So, Ego asks Team Z to prepare for the first selection. Next, in a scene change, we see a boy named SAE in an interview. It is revealed that he is a very famous young midfielder. The interviewer asks him if he plans to represent Japan in the future. SAE responds, saying that he doesn't because he believes there are no forwards in Japan worthy of his passes. SAE then decides to leave the interview. On his way, he comes across a press conference where a member of the Japanese union named HRY is talking about Blue Lock. He mentions that he needs a crazy project to make Japan advance. Upon hearing this, SAE is completely surprised. So, he decides to cancel his flight to Spain because he wants to witness the birth of the Blue Lock forward with his own eyes. On the other hand, we see Team Z preparing for their first selection match. They enter the field and notice the appearance of Team X, led by a player named Baru. It's revealed that the positions were decided by drawing lots a few hours earlier. Asagi now becomes the main forward, and after this, Ego announces that 1 player from each losing team will survive, and they will be the top scorers from the 3 losing teams in this phase. Back in the present, we see how the Z and X teams enter the match, and it begins. Akira passes the ball to Asagi, but a member of Team Z named Ray appears and takes the ball, which surprises Asagi greatly. Ray tells him that if he wants to survive in Blue Lock, he must become the top scorer for Team Z, so Asagi decides to search for a goal on his own. However, Kuni appears and steals the ball from Ray to do the same. This causes all the members of Team Z to become disorganized at that moment, as everyone plans to be the top scorer. In the midst of this, members of Team X steal the ball from Kuni, and we see how they also begin to fight among themselves. Asagi starts to wonder what he should do at that moment. But then, Baru appears and takes the ball in the midst of the chaos. Seeing this, Asagi tries to stop him, but Baru easily breaks through his defense. Afterward, Baru scores the first goal of the match, and his team begins to admire him. After this goal, we see how Team Z returns to playing selfishly, allowing Team X to steal the ball from them. Then, in a scene change, we see that they begin to organize themselves to support Baru, and the boys try to cover him. But then, Bear passes the ball to a teammate, who manages to score a goal. After several minutes, we see that Team X has already scored 5 goals. Isagi starts to think about what he should do to win, and Bakira offers to help him. So, Isagi decides to advance towards the goal, and Bakira passes the ball to him. But at that moment, Beru appears in front of Isagi to defend. Isagi starts to wonder what he should do. After a few seconds, Isagi begins to have a strange feeling, causing him to unconsciously pass the ball to the right. Then, Kuni appears and shoots the ball, leading Team Z to score their first goal. The match ends. Beru tells Isagi that he doesn't have what it takes to be a forward because he chose to pass the ball at the last moment. Isagi starts to feel very upset. After the match, the boys gather in the locker room, where Isagi mentions that Team X organized thanks to Beru's leadership. He realizes that Team Z needs this kind of leadership. Ego then appears and tells them they are close to finding the answer. He says they need a personal skill and that they must discover what each one's weapon is. After talking with Ego, the boys gather separately. Each one begins to mention their special skill. A boy named Kong decides to record all of these and asks Isagi what his secret weapon is. Isagi replies, saying he still doesn't know what his secret weapon is. Kong continues to ask the other players. Afterward, he asks a player named Chijiri what his secret skill is. Chijiri responds by saying he doesn't plan to tell anyone. This surprises everyone. Seeing that he doesn't want to answer, Kong decides not to bother him further. He then tells Team Z that he came up with a good strategy, where each player will have 10 minutes to shine using their weapon. The rest will work for a single player during this time. After hearing this strategy, the boys decide to start training to put into practice what they discussed in the upcoming games. After training, Isagi decides to have dinner very late, so he is alone in the dining hall. But then, Kuni appears in front of him and thanks him for the pass that allowed him to score his goal. Isagi asks Kuni why he plays soccer, to which he replies that it's because he wants to be a sports hero. He has always seen forwards as his heroes. Isagi is amazed by his answer. Kuni then reveals to Isagi that they receive bonuses for scoring goals. So Isagi decides to use his bonus to redeem a stake, which surprises him greatly. Kuni decides to give him half of the stake because he scored the goal thanks to Isagi. Afterward, he tells Isagi that they will win the next game, and Isagi agrees. The next day, we see how the Z team's match against Team Y begins. The boys decide to put their plan into action, which significantly improves the team's organization. In that, Kuni gets the opportunity to shoot and score a goal. However, the defenders of Team Y easily stop him. This surprises Kuni and Isagi. After a few minutes, Team Y manages to break through Team Z's defense. So, the star striker of Team Y, Akawa, seizes a clear opportunity. Once in the penalty area, Akawa shoots the ball and scores a fantastic goal. After this, Kon encourages the boys, telling them they need to equalize. However, Team Y starts to play with Team Z to waste time, causing the boys to lose the first half of the match. During the second half, we see a boy named Gaga getting his moment to shine. Isagi passes him the ball to attempt to score a goal, but he only manages to earn a corner kick, so Bakira decides to cross the ball. At that moment, Isagi notices that something is very wrong with the team, and he realizes that the mastermind of Team Y is a boy named Nico. He manages to thwart Nico's plans. Isagi tries to score a goal, but Nico deflects his shot. However, Gaga reaches the ball and scores a goal, resulting in a tie game. Nico notices that Isagi has great vision of the game, just like him, but he tells Isagi that he won't be able to beat him. Isagi decides to defeat him. We then see the match continue, and Isagi decides to mark Nico to prevent him from carrying out his plans. However, Team Y starts keeping the ball among themselves to waste time, which surprises the boys. Team Z loses the advantage with most of the players up front. At that moment, Nico gets the ball and enters Team Z's penalty area. He passes the ball to Akawa, but Isagi intercepts the pass. He tells Nico that he doesn't have what it takes to be a forward and score a goal. Isagi passes the ball to Kuni, who starts advancing across the field. He then passes the ball to Bakira, who manages to dribble past the defense using his dribbling skill. Bakira passes the ball to Isagi in an open area, surprising everyone. Isagi takes a shot and scores a great goal. Time runs out, and Team Z gets their first victory. Everyone begins to celebrate. Isagi realizes that he ruined Team Y's dream, and it makes him feel very good. After the victory, the boys celebrate their first win, gaining a lot of confidence. They decide to survive in Blue Lock. Later, we see that Isagi can't sleep because he's too excited. So, he goes to the video room to watch their match. There, he meets Shiri, who mentions that he also can't sleep. Chijiri tells Isagi that he thinks he has a great spatial awareness, which he believes is Isaga's secret weapon. Isagi thanks him for the information and then asks Chijiri what his weapon is. Chijiri reveals that he tore his right knee a year ago, so he's afraid of getting injured again. He came to Blue Lock to try to let go of his dream. The next day, we see the boys training. Yu appears and tells them that the rankings have changed again. With Isagi now in first place within Team Z, everyone is surprised to see this. Ego tells the boys that they need to find a unique play that stands out, as it will help them improve. Kyo suggests that the boys should rest, But Isagi decides to work on his physical fitness by running, and the others follow him. They all want to become stronger and move on to the next phase, so they begin to practice to face Team W. Thank you very much to see the video. You know, if you want a second part, give me a like and subscribe. Also here you will find other videos that may interest you. My name is Alex and I wish you a happy day, afternoon or evening. Bye bye.